Sophia felt his presence before she felt his touch. It was the kind of closeness that stole air, that made her body tense even when nothing had happened yet. Rafael Moretti stood behind her, so near that she could feel the heat of him through the thin fabric of her dress. He didn't rush. He never rushed. Power like his didn't need speed. "Don't move," he said quietly. It wasn't a shout, it wasn't a threat. That was what made it worse. Sophia's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. Her heartbeat was loud in her ears, wild and uneven. She told herself to breathe, but every breath felt like a mistake. This man was danger made human. Everyone knew it. The city whispered his name like a warning, like a prayer you said too late. Raphael's hand lifted, slow, deliberate, not touching her. Hovering. That space between them burned more than contact ever could. "You're shaking," he murmured close to her ear. Is it fear, or is it understanding? Sophia swallowed. She hated that he could tell. She hated that her body betrayed her when her mind screamed to run. "This wasn't my choice," she said, her voice barely steady. Raphael let out a soft breath that might have been a laugh, might have been something darker. Nothing important ever is. He stepped into her space fully now. The air changed. The room felt smaller, like the walls had leaned in to listen. Sophia caught a glimpse of him in the mirror. Black suit, sharp jaw, eyes that didn't beg or hesitate. Eyes that decided. "You know what tonight means," he continued. "Once this door closes, there is no pretending." Her reflection looked back at her, pale, wide-eyed, dressed in white that felt like a lie. A virgin bride to a man built on blood and fear. The contrast made her chest ache. "I won't be owned," she said, even though her voice trembled. Raphael's hand finally touched her. Not where she expected. Not possessive. Just 2 fingers, lifting her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. The contact was light, but it held her completely. "Careful," he warned softly. "I don't own things. I claim choices." That word, claim, settled deep inside her, heavy and dangerous. Outside the room, she could hear footsteps, guards, weapons shifting, the low murmur of a house that belonged to him. She was surrounded by his world, his rules, his shadows, and somehow she was the center of it. "You could still walk away," Raphael said, watching her closely. "Say the word. I won't stop you." Sophia searched his face for a lie. She found none. That terrified her more than cruelty ever could. "And if I stay?" she asked. His eyes darkened, not with hunger alone, but with intention, with something final. "Then you step into fire," he replied, "and fire doesn't let go unchanged." Her pulse raced. Every instinct told her this man could ruin her. Not just her body, her life, her name, her future. And yet, beneath the fear, something else stirred. A pull she didn't understand. A sense that this moment had been waiting for her long before she ever knew his name. Raphael leaned closer, his voice dropping to a vow only she could hear. "Tonight," he said, calm and absolute. "You are only mine." Not a promise of pleasure, a warning of fate. Sophia closed her eyes, standing at the edge of something irreversible, knowing one truth with terrifying clarity. Once Rafael Moretti chose you, there was no such thing as untouched again. The door closed behind them with a slow, final sound. Not slammed. Sealed. Sophia flinched anyway. That single click echoed louder than any gunshot, because it confirmed what her heart already knew. There was no audience now, no ceremony, no polite distance. Only truth. And in Rafael Moretti's world, truth was never gentle. "You should understand something," Raphael said as he moved toward the window. His back was to her, but his presence filled the room like a shadow that refused to leave. "This marriage is not about love." Sophia's throat tightened. She already knew that. Everyone did. Mafia marriages were contracts written in blood and fear, not affection. Still, Hearing it aloud made her stomach twist. "It's about survival," he continued. "Yours and mine." She took a step back until her legs touched the bed. White sheets, white flowers, white lies. The room was dressed like a dream, but it felt like a trap. "What happens if I say no?" she asked. Raphael turned slowly. The air shifted again. "You already know the answer," he said. "That's why you're still standing here." Sophia looked away. Saying no wasn't just about defying him. It meant defying men she had never seen. Rules she didn't understand, and enemies who didn't forgive. She had been handed over like a peace offering, wrapped in innocence to calm a war that had already claimed too many lives. "There is an unspoken rule," Raphael said, his voice steady, almost instructional. "Once a Moretti bride crosses this threshold, she is protected, untouchable, but only as long as she remains mine." The weight of that settled heavily on her chest. "And if I don't," she whispered. "Then you become a weakness," he answered without hesitation. "And weakness doesn't survive where I come from." Fear crawled up her spine. Not fear of him alone, but of everything waiting outside these walls. She thought of the faces that had pushed her into this fate, the hands that had signed her life, away with shaking relief. They had believed marrying Raphael Moretti was safer than refusing him. That should have told her everything. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold together the pieces of who she had been. Before tonight. "So this is forced," she said. "No choice, just a cage with silk curtains." Raphael studied her for a long moment. Then he shook his head slightly. "No," he said. "This is a line. Step back, and the world eats you alive. Step forward, and the monsters answer to me." A sudden noise outside. Raised voices, hurried footsteps. Sophia's breath caught. Raphael's eyes sharpened instantly, all softness gone. He reached for the gun at his side without panic, like a habit carved into his bones. "Stay where you are," he ordered. Her heart pounded. "What is that?" "Proof," he replied calmly, checking the door. "That tonight was never going to be simple." The voices grew closer, angrier. Someone was arguing in Italian, words sharp and urgent. Sophia didn't understand them, but she understood danger. It pressed against the walls, impatient, hunting for a crack. Raphael glanced back at her, just once. In that look was a clear, terrifying truth. This marriage wasn't just binding her to him. It was shielding her from something far worse. "And listen to me carefully, Sophia Hale," he said, low and serious. "From this moment on, there is one rule you never break." He stepped between her and the door, becoming a wall of muscle and will. "You don't belong to the world anymore," he finished. "You belong to the war that's coming." Raphael Moretti did not need to announce himself. The house already knew who ruled it. The raised voices outside the door fell silent the moment his footsteps approached. Even before he spoke, control settled into the room like a command no one dared question. Sophia watched him closely now, not as a groom, but as the man everyone feared to cross. He straightened his cuff slowly, deliberately. There was blood on his hands once. Everyone in this world knew that. But tonight, they were clean. That detail disturbed her more than if they weren't. A man who could wash away violence so easily was far more dangerous than one who drowned in it. "This house answers to me," Raphael said calmly, as if explaining the weather. "Every corridor, every man with a gun, every secret." Sophia swallowed. "And me?" He turned to her then, fully, no distance, no mask. "You," he said, "are the reason they are all here tonight." The word sent a shiver through her. She hadn't asked for this power. She hadn't asked to be important. Yet here she was, standing at the center of something sharp and lethal, wearing white while surrounded by men trained to kill. Raphael moved closer, but this time he stopped at a respectful distance. It felt intentional, like he was drawing a boundary only he was allowed to cross. "They call me cruel," he continued. "They call me heartless, and they are not wrong." His honesty unsettled her. He didn't defend himself. He didn't soften the truth. That alone made him impossible to read. "I don't raise my voice," he said. "I don't make empty threats, When I give a warning, it's already too late to ignore it. Sophia's hands clenched. Then why me? She asked. Why choose someone like me for a life? Like yours? Raphael's jaw tightened just slightly, just enough to reveal that she'd touched something real. Because this world destroys the soft, he said, and you are not as soft as you think. He stepped past her, opening a drawer near the bed. Inside were documents, sealed, envelopes, and a small silver dagger, ornamental but sharp, a symbol, not a weapon. This marriage, he said, holding up the papers, ends a blood feud that's been growing for 5 years. 3 families, dozens of deaths. Sophia felt dizzy. So I'm a bargain. You're a solution, he corrected, and solutions are protected. She laughed bitterly. By fear. Raphael met her gaze again, his eyes dark but steady. By loyalty, he said. Fear is unstable. Loyalty lasts. A knock came at the door, short, sharp. One of his men spoke quietly through it, urgency slipping through control. Raphael answered in Italian, his tone clipped, authoritative. Orders were given. Plans were already in motion. Sophia realized then that while she was still trying to understand what her life had become, Raphael Moretti had already adjusted the entire city around her presence. He ended the call and turned back to her. You see me now, he said. Not as a groom, not as a monster from stories, but as what I really am. And what is that? She asked. Raphael stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his certainty pressing against her fear. A man who does not lose, he said, and who never chooses without intention. His gaze dropped briefly to the ring waiting on the table. And tonight, he finished quietly, I chose you. Sophia Hale had lived a quiet life. No secrets, no power, just survival. She knew the weight of long shifts, unpaid bills, and choosing silence over conflict. She knew how to disappear in a crowd, how to lower her eyes, how to endure without being noticed. Her life had never been about winning. It had been about getting through the day without breaking. And now, she was standing before the most feared man in the city. The contrast felt unreal, like she had stepped out of her own body and into someone else's nightmare. The world she came from had rules too, but they were small, human rules. Don't entrust easily. Don't expect help. Don't dream too big. None of those rules had prepared her for a man like Raphael Moretti. He was watching her again. Not like men used to. There was no cheap hunger in his eyes, no careless desire. His gaze was steady, measuring, as if he were reading the truth she didn't know how to hide. You don't belong here, she said suddenly. Raphael didn't deny it. No, he replied, you don't. The honesty stung. It stripped away the last illusion that this might somehow make sense. Then why drag me into it? She asked. Why pull someone ordinary into a world like yours? Raphael leaned against the table, crossing his arms. Relaxed. Too relaxed for a man surrounded by danger. Because ordinary people get crushed, he said. And you're still standing. Sophia shook her head. You don't know me. I know enough, he answered. You didn't scream, you didn't beg, and you didn't run when you had the chance. She hadn't realized that about herself until he said it. The truth settled slowly, uncomfortable and heavy. Maybe she wasn't brave. Maybe she was just tired of being powerless. My life was simple, she said quietly. I worked, I went home, I stayed invisible. Raphael's eyes softened. Not with pity, but with something closer to respect. Invisible people survive longer, he said, but they're the first to be sacrificed. The words sent a chill through her. She understood them too well. She had been sacrificed already, handed over to end violence she never started. So this is it? She asked. My reward for surviving? Raphael stepped closer, lowering his voice. This is your turning point. She looked up at him, fear and defiance colliding in her chest. I don't want power, she said. I don't want your world. A faint smile touched his lips, brief and unreadable. No one ever does, he replied, until they realize power is the only thing that keeps them alive. Outside, the mansion remained tense, alert, waiting for the next move. Inside, Sophia felt something shift. Her quiet life was already gone. There was no path back to the girl she had been. She stood before Rafael Moretti, innocent, unarmed, and completely exposed. And for the first time, she understood the cruel truth. Survival had brought her this far. But surviving him would change her forever. He leaned close enough that Sophia felt him before he spoke. Not his touch, his authority. The space between them disappeared, not because he moved too fast, but because he moved with certainty. The kind that didn't ask permission. The kind that assumed the world would make room. "Tonight," Rafael said quietly, his voice low and controlled, "you are only mine." The words landed like a seal being pressed into hot wax. Final, unarguable. This wasn't desire spilling out of him. There was no rush, no hunger breaking through control. That would have been easier to face. This was something colder. He was stating a fact, the way one announced the weather or the outcome of a war. Sophia's breath caught. Her body reacted before her mind could stop it. Heart racing, skin tightening. A strange heat spreading where fear and awareness collided. She hated that reaction. Hated that he could affect her without even touching her. "I'm not something you can claim with words," she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. Rafael didn't step back. If anything, he leaned in just enough to make the air feel heavier. "No," he agreed calmly. "You're not something. You're someone." That should have eased her fear. It didn't. "Then don't talk like I'm property," she whispered. His eyes held hers, dark and unwavering. "In my world," he said, "being claimed is not about ownership. It's about responsibility." Responsibility. The word felt out of place on his tongue, and yet it carried weight. Outside the room, a door slammed. Somewhere below, a man shouted orders. The night was, alive with tension, like the city itself was holding its breath. Sophia suddenly understood that this moment wasn't private. It was watched, measured, expected. "This house knows the rules," Rafael continued. "My enemies know them too. Once I say those words, no one touches you without starting a war." Her stomach twisted. Protection wrapped in threat. Safety paid for with violence. "And if I don't want that protection?" she asked. Rafael's jaw tightened just slightly. "Then you stand alone," he said. "And tonight is not a night to stand alone." He straightened, giving her space again. But the declaration lingered between them, heavy and impossible to ignore. She felt like a line had been drawn around her, invisible but absolute. "You're afraid," he said. "Yes," she answered honestly. "Good," he replied. "Fear means you understand what's at stake." Sophia lifted her chin. "And what do you feel?" For the first time there was a pause. Just a fraction of a second, but enough. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, quieter, stripped of ceremony. "I feel the weight of choosing," he said, "and I don't choose lightly." The words settled deep in her chest. She realized then that this was bigger than a wedding night, bigger than fear or innocence. This was a turning of fate, one that could not be undone. Rafael took one step back, his tone returning to calm authority. "Get ready," he said. "Once we walk out of this room, the world will see you differently." Sophia looked down at her trembling hands, then back up at him. She had crossed an invisible line the moment he spoke those words. Not desire, not romance. A declaration that would change everything. This was the Mafia world. Not the version whispered about in fear-filled stories. Not exaggerated legends meant to scare children, but the real one. Cold, organized, unforgiving. Here, loyalty came before love. Blood outweighed mercy. And once chosen, escape was a myth people told themselves to sleep at night. Rafael led Sophia out of the private room and into the long corridor beyond. Low, golden lights, reflected against dark marble floors, elegant enough to deceive. But the tension was sharp, precise, and lethal. Men stood posted every few steps, dressed in black, weapons always within reach. None of them stared. None of them smiled. Each man acknowledged Raphael with a single nod, no questions, no hesitation. Authority moved ahead of him like an invisible force. Sophia felt the weight of unseen eyes tracking her every step. She wasn't just being observed. She was being assessed, measured, catalogued. In this world, she understood, a woman didn't simply marry a man. She inherited his enemies, his debts, his wars. "This is my family," Raphael said calmly, never slowing his stride. "Not by blood, by choice." Choice. That word again. Heavy, deliberate, irreversible. She noticed the scars now, across knuckles, along necks, hidden beneath tailored suits and controlled expressions. These men had lived violence and survived it. They carried it quietly, like a discipline, not a thrill. They followed Raphael not because they loved him, but because they believed in him. Fear could build empires. Belief was what kept them standing. They reached a balcony overlooking the main hall. Below, dozens of figures moved in murmurs and shadows. Conversations died the instant Raphael appeared. Power rippled through the room without a single word spoken. "This is what you're stepping into," he said. "Every alliance you see was bought with blood. Every smile hides a blade." Sophia gripped the railing, her breath tight. "And if I break the rules?" Raphael turned to her then. His expression wasn't cruel. It was honest. "Then the world corrects you," he said evenly. "Not me." That terrified her more than any threat ever could. There were no second chances here. No apologies. Mistakes were paid for permanently. A man approached, speaking rapidly in Italian. Raphael listened without interruption, gave a short instruction, and the man disappeared immediately. No debate. No delay. Sophia realized something chilling. Raphael didn't react to danger. He anticipated it. This world moved according to his planning, his instincts, his control. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "This life?" Raphael didn't answer right away. "Regret is a luxury," he said finally. "It slows you down." They continued walking past rooms filled with whispered deals and silent threats. Wealth surrounded them, art, crystal, gold, but none of it felt safe. Everything was guarded. Everything was watched. "This world doesn't forgive innocence," Raphael said. "It uses it." Sophia looked up at him. "Then why bring me into it?" He stopped. For the first time since leaving the room, Raphael faced her fully. "Because once you're mine," he said, his voice low and unyielding, "innocence becomes protection, not weakness." The truth settled over her like iron. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was a contract with consequences. She wasn't just marrying Raphael Moretti. She was crossing into a world where loyalty mattered more than love, where mercy could get you killed, and where escape was nothing more than a dangerous illusion. And the most terrifying truth of all, the moment she had been chosen, the door behind her had already closed. Sophia had been traded to end a war. Not asked, not warned. Traded, a clean bride for dirty peace. The truth sat heavy in her chest as Raphael led her into a quieter wing of the mansion. The noise faded here. No laughter, no music, just thick silence and guarded doors. This was the part of the house meant for decisions, not celebrations. She had always sensed something was wrong when her name was first mentioned in hushed conversations, the sudden kindness, the urgent paperwork, the way people avoided her eyes. Now it all made sense. "I was the solution," she said softly. Raphael didn't correct her. She stopped walking. "How many people stopped dying because of me?" He turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "Enough to matter." The answer made her stomach turn. Lives balanced against her future, her body, her name. She thought of the nights she'd gone to sleep believing she was unimportant, invisible. She had been wrong. She was valuable, just not in the way she'd imagined. "I don't know how to be what you need," she admitted. "I don't know guns. I don't know threats or strategy." Raphael studied her for a moment, then shook his head. "Good," he said. "If you did, you wouldn't be standing here." She frowned. Then why choose someone like me? Because peace needs something uncontaminated, he replied. A symbol no one can argue with. A symbol, not a soldier, not a queen, a sacrifice dressed as a bride. Sophia's hands curled into fists. And if the peace breaks? Raphael's eyes hardened. Then the war resumes, he said, and everyone will remember why it ended in the first place. Fear settled deep in her bones. Not the sharp fear of sudden danger, but the slow, heavy fear of responsibility. She wasn't just afraid of being hurt. She was afraid of failing, of being the reason blood spilled again. I didn't agree to this, she whispered. No, Raphael said quietly. But you were chosen. Chosen. That word followed her like a shadow. She looked at him then. Not as a monster, not as a groom, but as a man carrying a war on his shoulders. He hadn't created the rules. He enforced them because someone had to. I'm not brave, she said. Raphael stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're still here, he said. That's enough. She let out a shaky breath. He was right. She was terrified, unprepared, and painfully aware of what she was being asked to give up. But she was standing. She hadn't broken yet. She didn't know guns. She didn't know bloodshed. But she knew fear, and fear had taught her how to endure. Sophia lifted her chin, tears burning but unshed. If I'm the price of peace, she said, then I won't be wasted. Raphael held her gaze, something dark and approving flickering in his eyes. In that moment, the war paused. Balanced on the quiet strength of a woman who had never wanted power, but was about to carry it anyway. Sophia told herself she felt nothing for him. She repeated it like a rule, like protection. But the silence between her and Raphael was charged now, heavy with things neither of them had planned. Fear was still there, sharp, undeniable, but beneath it something else stirred. Something she didn't want to name. They stood too close. Not touching. Never touching. And yet, her body was aware of him in a way that felt dangerous. His height. His stillness. The way his attention never drifted. Raphael Moretti didn't look at her often, but when he did, it felt complete. Like nothing about her escaped him. This changes nothing, she said suddenly, as if saying it out loud might make it true. I won't pretend this is something else. Raphael's gaze lifted slowly to meet hers. I wouldn't insult you by pretending, he replied. That should have eased her. Instead, it unsettled her. She moved toward the window, needing space, needing air. Outside, the city glowed, alive, unaware that deals were being sealed above it. She pressed her palm to the cool glass. I don't want to feel this, she admitted quietly. Raphael remained where he was. He didn't follow. That restraint made it worse. Feel what? He asked. She hesitated. Pulled, she said. And I don't know why. The word hung between them. Raphael exhaled slowly. Because attraction doesn't ask permission, he said. And it doesn't care about timing. Sophia turned back to him, frustration flashing through her fear. This isn't attraction. This is proximity, fear, circumstance. All true, he agreed, and still not the whole story. He took one step closer, only one. Enough to remind her that distance was a choice he was allowing. You think I don't feel it? He asked, voice low. That I don't recognize the danger in wanting what I should only protect? Her heart stumbled. Then stop, she whispered. Raphael's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he would. That he would step back and end this tension before it could grow teeth. Instead, he said, I control what I do, not what exists. The honesty shook her. She had never been looked at like this. Not as something fragile to be handled carefully, not as something to be taken, but as something that mattered enough to be restrained from. This is forbidden, she said. Yes, he answered simply. That should be enough. In my world, he replied, forbidden things are the only ones worth guarding. The words sent a shiver through her. She hated how they echoed inside her, how they made her feel seen and exposed at the same time. She took a step back, putting space between them. Again, her breath unsteady. This can't become real, she said. I won't survive it. Raphael didn't argue. He didn't deny it. Then don't let it become a fantasy, he said. Let it stay what it is. And what is that? She asked. He held her gaze, his expression controlled but intense. A pull neither of us asked for, he said, and neither of us can ignore. Sophia looked away, her chest tight. She understood the danger now, not just of his world, but of her own heart. This wasn't romance. It was tension sharpened by circumstance, attraction, fueled by fear and fate, unwanted, unwise, and already too real. She had stepped into his world for peace. What she hadn't expected was that her heart might follow, even as her mind begged her not to. The moment they stepped back into the main hall, Raphael changed. It wasn't dramatic. There was no shift in posture or tone that an outsider would easily notice. But Sophia felt it instantly. The quiet intensity she had seen in private hardened into something colder, sharper. The man beside her was no longer just Raphael. He was Moretti. Conversations died mid-sentence as he entered. Men straightened. Women lowered their eyes. Power rolled through the room like a warning no one needed explained. Raphael's hand settled, lightly at the small of Sophia's back, not possessive, not gentle, strategic, a signal. She understood it instinctively. Stay close. Don't speak unless spoken to. Let him lead. A man approached, confidence forced, smile tight. Congratulations, he said, his eyes flicking to Sophia before returning to Raphael. Peace at last. Raphael's expression didn't change. Peace holds as long as respect does, he replied. The man swallowed and nodded, stepping back immediately. Sophia felt it then, the fear, not hers, theirs. This was the Raphael the city knew, controlled, untouchable, a man whose approval kept you, alive, and whose disapproval ended everything. He spoke little, but every word carried consequence. They moved through the hall together, and everywhere they went, the same pattern repeated. Deference, distance, obedience. No one questioned his authority. No one tested his patience. Yet in the middle of it all, Sophia noticed something that didn't fit. Every time someone came too close, Raphael adjusted his position slightly, always placing himself between her and the crowd. When voices grew louder, his hand tightened just enough to ground her. When her steps faltered, he slowed without looking. No one else noticed. But she did. You don't have to do that, she murmured under her breath. Raphael didn't look at her. Yes, he said quietly. I do. They reached a table where several powerful men waited, faces hardened by years of violence and negotiation. One of them glanced at Sophia openly, assessing. Raphael's gaze followed instantly. The temperature around them dropped. Eyes on me, Raphael said calmly. The man complied without protest. Sophia's pulse raced. She had just witnessed something terrifying, and strangely reassuring. Raphael hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't threatened. He hadn't needed to. Later, when they finally stepped aside into a shadowed corner, she exhaled shakily. You're different out there, she said. Raphael turned to her. The edge softened, just a little. Out there, I'm a warning, he replied. With you, I'm a responsibility. The words hit her harder than any threat. Aren't those the same thing? She asked. No, he said. One destroys, the other protects. She searched his face, trying to reconcile the two men she'd seen, the feared boss who ruled the room, and the controlled protector who shielded her without asking for thanks. You could use me, she said quietly. Hide behind the marriage, behind appearances. I could, he agreed. But you don't, she finished. Raphael held her gaze. "Because if I ever stop protecting you," he said, "I become exactly what everyone thinks I am." The honesty left her breathless. In that moment, Sophia understood the truth of Raphael Moretti. The world feared him because it only saw the man capable of cruelty. She saw the man who chose control instead. And that difference, that dangerous, deliberate restraint, made him far more powerful than fear ever could. The night had barely begun. The mansion was quiet. The kind of quiet that made every creak, every whisper, feel magnified. Sophia thought she might finally breathe, that maybe the walls of Raphael's world could be temporarily forgotten. Then it came. A sudden crash from below. A window shattered, glass sprang across the polished floor. Gunfire followed, sharp and rapid, echoing through the hallways. Sophia froze, her body pressed instinctively against Raphael, heart hammering in terror. He was immediate. Raphael Moretti didn't hesitate. His hand went to the gun at his side, his eyes scanning, calculating, commanding. The calm authority she had seen in public had intensified here, feral, precise, dangerous. "Stay behind me," he ordered, voice low but unyielding. Sophia's throat went dry. What is happening?" "An unwelcome guest," he said, already moving toward the staircase, every step measured. "Someone testing boundaries, testing me." The echo of footsteps, shouting in Italian, and the unmistakable clatter of weapons being readied filled the air. Sophia could feel the fear rising in everyone else in the house. But Raphael moved as if the chaos belonged to him. He was everywhere at once, leading, defending, controlling. She wanted to run. Her instinct screamed to escape, to hide. But she didn't. Not because she was brave. Because she couldn't leave him. A shadow darted across the bottom of the staircase. Raphael fired, clean and precise. One shot. Silence, followed by the thud of a body hitting the floor. He didn't flinch. He didn't celebrate. He simply turned, scanning the room again, eyes sharp. "You're safe," he said, finally lowering the gun, though his muscles remained tense, ready. "For now." Sophia's knees threatened to buckle. "Safe," she whispered. "For now." Raphael's gaze softened for the briefest moment. A flicker of human beneath the predator. "I can't make promises about the world," he said. "Only about myself." The enormity of that statement hit her. In this life, protection was not guaranteed. Death, betrayal, chaos, they were constants. But Raphael chose to stand between her and it, every time. Someone called out from the floor below, one of his men reporting. Raphael gave a few quick instructions in Italian, then turned back to her, taking her hand firmly. "You don't move unless I say," he warned. "Not because I doubt you, but because I refuse to let anything touch you while I can stop it." Sophia looked up at him, her chest tight. The man she had feared, resented, and yet felt drawn to was entirely different in this light. Feared by the city, merciless to enemies, and yet completely hers when danger arrived. For a moment, the adrenaline, the terror, and the strange pull between them all collided. She realized she hadn't felt fear like this before. Fear that was sharpened by presence, by trust, by the knowledge that one man could hold the storm at bay. And Raphael knew it. He didn't just see danger. He controlled it. And in doing so, he had claimed her safety, whether she wanted to be claimed or not. The mansion settled again, silence creeping back, punctuated only by the distant echo of retreating threats. Sophia finally exhaled, trembling. Raphael's hand stayed on her back, steadying her. "This world will always test you," he murmured. "But so long as I'm here, no one crosses that line." Sophia swallowed, chest tight, eyes locked on him. In that moment, she understood the truth. Surviving him wasn't enough. Surviving this life would mean letting him guard her, even as her heart argued against it. The danger had arrived. And with it, So had the undeniable reality. Her life, her fear, and her fate were now inseparable from Rafael Moretti. The echoes of gunfire had barely faded when Rafael turned to Sofia, his expression unreadable. The walls of the mansion were still tense with residual threat, but he moved as if nothing outside mattered anymore. Only her. "You should leave," he said quietly, his tone calm but firm. "Go somewhere safe, out of the house, out of this world." Sofia's heart stopped. "I go? Alone?" He shook his head, stepping closer, closing the space she had tried to put between them. "No, you stay. With me." Fear twisted in her chest. She had been trained or conditioned to think that the world dictated survival. But here, Rafael dictated it. Every rule, every line, every dangerous breath was under his control. For now, at least. "You don't have to risk yourself for me," she said, trying to step back, to regain some semblance of agency. Rafael's hand lifted, resting lightly on her shoulder. Not heavy, not restraining, but anchoring. "You don't understand," he said, low and deliberate. "This isn't about risk, it's about choice. And tonight, I choose you." The words hit harder than any threat, any command, any declaration he had ever made. Choice. She had been a pawn, a solution to a war she hadn't started. Yet here, in the midst of chaos and danger, he had chosen her anyway. Sofia shook her head, disbelief warring with the strange warmth spreading in her chest. "Why me?" she whispered. Rafael's eyes softened, just slightly. Not enough to be mistaken for weakness, but enough to hint at the man beneath the legend. "Because you're the only one who doesn't belong in this world, and the only one I can't let be hurt." She swallowed hard, the words settling deep in her. She had imagined all sorts of outcomes for this night: fear, humiliation, escape. But never this: that the most dangerous man in the city would put her safety above everything else. "And the power?" she asked cautiously. "Your empire? Your enemies?" His jaw tightened, shadowed in the dim light. "The world waits," he said. "It can survive one night without me attending to it. You cannot." Sofia felt the weight of his protection, heavy and absolute. He wasn't shielding her from danger out of obligation. He was shielding her because she mattered. And that realization made her pulse quicken in ways that had nothing to do with fear. "Stay close," he said, taking her hand, the gesture subtle but full of intent. "I won't let anyone cross that line. Not tonight. Not ever." Her lips parted, but no words came. How could she explain the surge of conflicting emotions? Relief, fear, attraction, disbelief. How could she reconcile the man who commanded the city with the man who, in this moment, only cared for her? Rafael's eyes met hers again, unwavering, unyielding. "You are mine to protect," he said softly. "And for tonight, that matters more than anything else." Sofia felt a shiver run down her spine. This was no empty promise. She could see it in the way he carried himself, the way he breathed, the way he existed. A predator and a guardian rolled into one, fierce and impossible, yet entirely devoted to keeping her safe. For the first time since she had arrived in this world, Sofia allowed herself to believe that someone, not circumstance, not chance, not fate, was choosing her. Rafael Moretti, the man feared by the city, the man who ruled by darkness and steel, had chosen her, and in that choice, she found something she hadn't known she'd been searching for. A fleeting, fragile sense of safety. Tonight the world could wait. For now she was his, and he would not let anyone or anything take her from him. The mansion was quiet again, but the tension lingered, like smoke that refused to dissipate. Sofia followed Rafael down a dimly lit hallway, her steps hesitant. She had survived the danger, the gunfire, the chaos, but something else had shifted within her. Something far more. Dangerous curiosity. She had always seen him as a monster, a man of shadows, blood, and fear. The city whispered his name like a curse, and everyone who met him knew to tread carefully. But tonight, she had glimpsed something else. He paused near a tall window, looking out at the city below. The streetlights flickered, casting sharp shadows across his face. For a brief moment, he was just a man, not the Mafia king, not the predator, not the legend. Just a man with shoulders squared against the weight of the world, eyes heavy with things no one could see. "You're quiet," he observed without turning. Sophia swallowed. I'm trying to understand you." He chuckled softly, low and dark, almost a sound of disbelief. "Understand me?" "Yes," she said, stepping closer. You're not just the man everyone fears. There's something else there. Something human." Raphael finally turned to her. The mask of control softened, not gone, but cracked in a way that revealed the weight he carried. The lines around his eyes were sharper tonight, shadows of sleepless nights, of decisions made at gunpoint, of lives chosen over others. "You see it too clearly," he said. "And that's dangerous." Sophia frowned. "Dangerous how?" He hesitated, just slightly, long enough for her to notice. "Because if you see the man beneath, the monster," he said quietly, "you start expecting mercy where there is none." Her chest tightened. "I'm not expecting mercy," she said truthfully. I just want to know who you are, not what the world says you are." He studied her. For the first time since she arrived, he didn't speak in control, in declarations, in commands. His shoulders slumped slightly, a fraction, as if the city, the empire, and the fear could finally rest for a second. "I'm tired," he admitted, voice low, almost broken, "of being feared, of being alone, of carrying everything while everyone expects nothing." And Sophia's breath caught. This was the man no one saw, the man beneath the headlines, beneath the violence, beneath the empire, the man who was human, who hurt, who bore burdens too heavy for most people to imagine. "You don't have to carry it alone," she whispered. He looked at her then, fully, as if the idea itself startled him. The steel in his eyes softened just enough that she could see vulnerability. Just enough to remind her that beneath the monster was a man who had survived, who had loved and who, despite everything, still chose to protect. "I protect," he said finally. "Not because I want to be kind, but because if I don't, everything collapses. And sometimes that includes the people I care about." Her fingers brushed against his arm, almost unconsciously. "Then let me help," she said softly. "Let me stand with you." He flinched, not at the touch but at the implication. The world he ruled didn't allow softness, didn't allow trust, didn't allow attachment, and yet he let her stay close. "You don't know what you're asking," he said, voice trembling slightly. "Maybe," she admitted, "but I want to know you, Raphael, the real you." For a heartbeat, the monster slipped. The city's king, the feared predator, the untouchable mafia, boss, all of it faded into the man standing before her, tired, burdened, human. And in that crack, small, fragile, almost imperceptible, Sophia realized something terrifying. She had glimpsed the man beneath the monster, and she couldn't look away. The room was heavy with silence, the kind that pressed against the chest, but Sophia no longer felt entirely small. The fear was still there, sharp and alive, but beneath it, something new had begun to grow, a quiet strength. She looked at Raphael, standing like a shadow at the edge of the room, and realized she didn't have to stay invisible. She had survived his world, the threats, the guns, the rules that had tried to bind her before she even knew them, and now she had a voice. "I'm not just here to be protected," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. "I'm not just a pawn in someone else's game." Raphael froze, not visibly, but the tension in the air shifted. He tilted his head, watching her with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You think I've forgotten that?" he asked, tone even. "I don't know what you think," she admitted. "All I know is that I have to be more than what everyone expects of me, more than what you expect of me, and I have to make choices too." For a moment, the air seemed to hold its breath. She had spoken and he had listened, truly listened, not just nodded, not just let the words pass, but allowed them to land, allowed them to matter. "You speak boldly," he said finally. And dangerously. She met his gaze. Maybe, she said. But I need you to see me. Not as fragile. Not as innocent. Not just as someone to guard. I need to exist in this world, too. Raphael's eyes softened, in a way that caught her off guard. A flicker of something human, almost approving, crossed his face. You've been underestimated, he said. By them, by the world, and perhaps even by yourself. I won't be underestimated anymore, Sophia said firmly. The power in her voice surprised her more than it surprised him. She felt it spreading, like heat rising from her chest to the tips of her fingers. And Raphael, who commanded fear and obedience from the city, was listening. Not dictating, not commanding, listening. That is dangerous, he said, a low chuckle escaping him. But it suits you. She frowned. Dangerous? Yes, he admitted. Because speaking your mind in my world, it can get you killed, and yet you've chosen to do it anyway. Sophia drew in a shaky breath. Then I choose it deliberately. I won't be silent just because the rules say I should. I won't exist only to be protected or hidden. I can fight and I can survive. And I need you to see that, not just protect me blindly. Raphael regarded her for a long, intense moment. Then he nodded, slightly, imperceptibly, to anyone else but monumental to her. You've shifted the balance, he said quietly. Tonight I choose not only to protect you, but to acknowledge that you can stand beside me, not just behind me. Her chest tightened. This was more than words. This was recognition. This was a silent promise that she could exist fully in his world, not merely as a pawn, not merely as a bride, but as someone who mattered in her own right. Sophia realized then that something had changed. The line between fear and respect had blurred, between innocence and strength, between them. She had spoken, and he had listened. For the first time, she felt the scales tip, not completely, not forever, but enough to know that she had power here too. And Raphael, ever perceptive, saw it, and accepted it. The candlelight flickered across the walls, casting shadows that danced like memories and warnings. Sophia stood quietly, her hands clasped together, as if grounding herself against the whirlwind her life had become. Raphael didn't need to speak for her to feel it. The air between them was taut, charged with unspoken truths. Every glance, every shift of weight, every measured breath carried the weight of inevitability. You feel it too, don't you? She asked softly. This pull, the way everything led to this night. Raphael's gaze held hers, unwavering, steady, impossible to ignore. Yes, he said. But it isn't just a pull. It's a path. One we were already walking long before we realized it. Sophia shivered. Fate. Destiny. Words she had never believed in. Until now. The way their worlds collided. Her ordinary, fragile life thrust into his empire of shadows. It was too precise, too deliberate, too unavoidable to be coincidence. So this is it, she whispered. Once we take this step, there's no turning back. He stepped closer, the heat of him filling the small space between them. But the restraint remained. Controlled. Calculated. A predator learning to temper himself. No, he said. There is no turning back. But that's not something to fear. That's something to honor. Her lips parted, eyes searching his for reassurance. Honor? She repeated. Yes, he said softly. Every choice, every vow, every danger that brought us here. It was meant to bind us, to prepare us. Fate doesn't make mistakes, Sophia, and neither do I. Her heart raced. She wanted to protest. She wanted to remind herself that she had agency, that she had fought for survival, that this world didn't belong to him alone. But the truth pressed, down on her chest, undeniable and heavy. The threads of their lives had intertwined long before she'd walked into the mansion, long before the threats, the fear, the forbidden pull. Raphael extended his hand, deliberate, offering her the smallest of gestures that carried the heaviest of meanings. One vow, he said quietly, one moment, and we acknowledge it, together. a bond that cannot be undone, no matter the storms ahead. Sophia hesitated, breath shallow, caught between instinct and inevitability. Her life had been built on rules, survival, and distance. But the man before her, dangerous, commanding, impossible, was asking for trust, not just submission, not just fear, trust. She began and her voice faltered, then steadied. I accept it. I accept this bond. Fate, you, the choice, all of it. Raphael's eyes darkened, not with hunger, not with power, but with something fierce, solemn, eternal. He stepped closer, finally closing the last fraction of space between them. Then it is done, he said, voice low and unwavering. Tonight our paths are sealed, our fates intertwined, irreversible, unbreakable. Sophia felt the weight of his words settle inside her. Fear was still there, an undercurrent, but it was tempered now by recognition. They were bound together, not just by circumstance, not just by danger, but by destiny itself. And in that moment, she understood something terrifying and exhilarating all at once. No force could undo what had already begun. No choice could sever the threads that fate had tied. They were bound, irrevocably. The night stretched on, quiet and heavy with promise. The world outside continued, unaware of the pact that had been made. Inside, Sophia and Raphael stood together, not as predator and prey, not as bride and groom, but as two souls caught in the inevitability of a destiny neither could escape. And for the first time, she realized that was exactly how it was meant to be. The room felt smaller now, though the mansion around them stretched endlessly. Sophia's heart hammered in her chest, not from fear this time, but from the impossible decision pressing down. On her, run or stay. All her life, running had been her instinct. Survival meant silence, invisibility, escape. She had practiced it in every apartment, every street, every moment she'd been overlooked. But now running didn't feel like freedom. It felt like abandoning the one person who had chosen her, not for power, not for convenience, but because he wanted her alive, whole, present. Raphael watched her closely. He didn't press, didn't move closer, didn't speak. He let her wrestle with the choice on her own. That was terrifying in its own way. The man who controlled empires, who orchestrated fear with a flick of his hand, now gave her agency and trust. Go, he said finally, voice steady. Leave this world. Walk out that door. No one will blame you. No one will stop you. Her chest tightened. And you? She asked quietly. What happens if I run? He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. Then I lose what I've chosen, and that I do not allow lightly. The words hit her with force. Choice was hers, but the consequences weren't. Her heart pounded, mind spinning. Outside waited danger, unpredictability, enemies she could never face. Inside waited certainty, protection, and the man who had proven, over fire, fear, and threats, that he would stand between her and the world. Sophia closed her eyes, remembering the chaos of the night, the gunfire, the shouts, the danger that seemed to follow her like a shadow. She remembered the look in Raphael's eyes when he said she was his to protect, the way he had controlled every move, every moment, every risk. And deep inside, she realized that freedom didn't mean running. Survival didn't mean escaping. Safety, maybe even life itself, had a new definition tonight. I can't leave, she said finally, voice trembling but certain. Raphael's eyes softened, the barest flicker of relief, approval, something she wasn't sure anyone else would ever see. Then you stay, he said, stepping close enough that she felt the warmth of him, the presence that had been constant even in fear. And you trust me. Trust that I will keep you alive, no matter what comes. Sophia nodded, a shaky breath escaping. She wasn't naive. She knew the world he ruled. She knew the danger. But she also knew something else. Leaving wasn't freedom. Staying, choosing him, choosing this life, choosing the bond they had formed, was the only way she could survive fully. Her hand brushed against his, almost unintentionally. He didn't flinch. He didn't demand. He simply let the contact linger, a silent confirmation that her choice was theirs together. "Then it's done," he murmured, voice low, dangerous, and soft all at once. "You stay. And tonight we face the world as it is. Together." Sophia lifted her chin, heart pounding, mind spinning. She wasn't just staying because of fear. She wasn't staying because she had no choice. She was staying because in the quiet moments between danger and chaos she had realized something undeniable. Her life, her fate, was bound to Rafael Moretti. And for the first time, she didn't want to run. Not from him, not from this, not from the path they had already begun to walk together. The room was silent, save for the soft hum of the city beyond the mansion walls. The danger had passed, for now, but the tension lingered, like a thread stretched tight between them. Sophia stood close to Rafael, her chest still racing, her mind still tangled in the chaos of choice, fear, and desire. She had fought herself for hours, fought her instincts, her past, her fear. She had told herself to stay distant, to remain cautious, to never give him the satisfaction of breaking her. And yet, here she was, inches from him, feeling the heat of his presence, the certainty in his eyes, the unspoken promise that he would never harm her without reason. Rafael didn't move toward her immediately. He let her process, let her come to him on her own terms. That restraint, that choice, was terrifying and thrilling all at once. Finally, Sophia exhaled, letting her hands drop from their tense fists to rest lightly against her own sides. She looked up at him, meeting his gaze fully for the first time without flinching, without shrinking. "I trust you," she whispered. The words were simple, but they carried everything she had been feeling: fear, doubt, hesitation, and an acknowledgement that she could let go, even just a little. Not because she was compelled, but because she chose to. Raphael's jaw relaxed slightly, the faintest flicker of a smile touching his lips. "That," he said, voice low and deliberate, "changes everything." Sophia felt a warmth spread through her chest. This wasn't about submission. This wasn't about fear. This was acceptance. Her acceptance of him, of the life that had been thrust upon her, of the dangerous, intoxicating pull that existed between them. She was no longer just surviving. She was participating. She was choosing. Raphael reached out, slowly, deliberately, giving her all the space she needed. His hand hovered, near hers, close enough that she could feel the faint heat radiating from him, but not closing the gap until she allowed it. When she finally placed her hand in his, the connection wasn't a surrender. It was a pact. Consent through trust through choice. "You don't have to fear me anymore," he murmured, brushing his thumb across her knuckles. "Not tonight. Not ever, if you don't want to." Sophia shook her head, a small smile breaking through the tension. "I've already survived fear. I think I can survive anything else, as long as it's with you." His eyes darkened, not with desire alone, but with something deeper. Protection, respect, and the acknowledgement that she had finally become more than just the pawn in his world. She had become a partner. "Then we begin," he said quietly, his voice both a promise and a warning. "Together." And in that moment, Sophia realized the truth she had been resisting. She didn't have to be afraid to be his. She didn't have to be silent to survive. She could accept him, trust him, and stand beside him. Not fear, not obligation. Consent, choice, trust. And for the first time, she felt the dangerous, intoxicating world of Rafael Moretti could be hers. not as a prisoner, but as someone who belonged. They stood together in the quiet aftermath of everything that had threatened to tear them apart. No music, no witnesses, no ceremony beyond what mattered. The city outside continued to breathe, unaware that something irreversible had just settled into place inside these walls. Raphael did not touch her right away. That was the difference. In a world where he took control with a word, where men bowed and enemies bled, he waited. He let the moment exist without force, without demand. And Sophia understood then, this was not about possession of the body. This was something far deeper. "You're still here," he said softly. Not as a question, as recognition. Sophia nodded. "So are you." Their eyes held, steady and unflinching. The air between them felt charged, not with urgency, but with gravity. Like a decision that had already been made by both of them long before this. Night gave it a name. Raphael reached up slowly and removed the ring from his finger. He didn't kneel. He didn't perform. He simply placed it in her open palm. "This isn't ownership," he said. "It's acknowledgement." Her fingers closed around the ring, warmth spreading through her chest. "Of what?" she asked. "That you are mine to stand with," he replied. "Not behind me, not beneath me, with me." The word settled into her, heavy and steady. She had been claimed before, by fear, by circumstance, by people who saw her as expendable. This was different. This was chosen. Sophia stepped closer, close enough that their foreheads nearly touched. "Then hear this," she said quietly. "I'm not yours because I was traded. I'm not yours because I had nowhere else to go." Raphael listened, fully. "I'm yours," she continued, voice steady now, "because I choose you too." Something in his expression broke, not loudly, not completely, but enough. The armor shifted. The monster receded. What remained was a man accepting something he had never allowed himself to want. He placed his hand over her heart, flat and warm. Not possessive, protective. "Then it's done," he said. "This is the bond. No blood, no witnesses, no force. Just truth." Sophia covered his hand with hers, feeling the strength there, the steadiness. She wasn't afraid of it anymore. She wasn't afraid of him. Around them, the world of power and violence still existed. Enemies still breathed. Wars still waited. But something fundamental had changed. Raphael Moretti had claimed many things in his life: territory, loyalty, fear. Tonight, he claimed something far more dangerous: her trust. And Sophia Hale, quiet, overlooked, traded like a solution, claimed something just as powerful. In return, a place at his side. Not as a bride of obligation, not as a symbol of peace, but as the woman he had chosen, and who had chosen him back. The city erupted in distant fireworks, brilliant bursts of light painting the night sky. Sophia leaned against the balcony railing, the cool air brushing her face, her chest still thrumming from the night's chaos. Below, the streets were quieter now. The threats, the danger, the gunfire, they had all receded, as if the world itself recognized that something had shifted, irrevocably. Raphael stood beside her, silent, towering, a calm presence against the brilliance outside. No, words were needed for a moment. The hum of the city, the fading echoes of the fireworks, and the faint tension of the night wrapped around them like a cocoon. Finally, he broke the silence, voice low, almost intimate. "I don't lose what I choose," he said. The words made her turn to him, eyes searching his. There was no arrogance, no threat, no empire behind them. Just truth. Quiet, absolute, and unflinching. Sophia's breath caught. "You choose me?" she asked softly, disbelief laced with hope. Raphael's lips curved into the tiniest shadow of a smile. He leaned close, forehead resting lightly against hers, and whispered, "And tonight, I chose you." The simplicity of it stunned her. Not desire, not possession, not power. Choice, commitment, an unspoken vow sealed in the quiet aftermath of fear, violence, and chaos. Sophia let the weight of it settle. She had been traded, threatened, tested, and pushed to the edge of her world. She had been afraid, uncertain, overwhelmed. But now, she felt seen, chosen, protected, and loved. Not loudly, not recklessly, but with a depth that surpassed everything else. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw, tentative yet certain. Then, "I choose you too," she whispered, letting the words flow like a promise she had been holding back. A promise of trust, of acceptance, of fate embraced. Raphael's eyes softened, shadowed yet brilliant in the firework light. "We face everything, together," he murmured. "No running, no fear. Only us." The fireworks cracked again overhead, a perfect fleeting reflection of the storm they had endured together. Sophia rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat beneath, their unspoken rhythm, their bond sealed not by law, not by circumstance, but by choice. For the first time since this world had claimed her, she smiled without hesitation. The danger hadn't vanished. The empire still loomed. But tonight she was not just surviving. She was home. And Raphael Moretti, feared by all, dark, untouchable, and powerful, had finally admitted a truth he rarely shared. "I don't lose what I choose. And tonight, I chose you." And in that choice, Sophia Hale knew one thing with absolute certainty. Nothing could ever take her away from him. Not fear, not enemies, not even the world itself. Tonight we witnessed a world of shadows, danger, and impossible choices. We followed Sophia as she stepped into a life she never asked for and discovered a love that could protect her, challenge her, and claim her heart entirely. If you felt your pulse quicken, your heart race, or your breath catch, you are not alone. This story isn't just about power or fear, it's about trust, choice, and the moment you realize that someone will fight for you, no matter the cost. Don't miss the next chapter of passion, danger, and the forbidden pull of the Mafia world. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and join us for every heartbeat, every secret, every daring promise. Because in Raphael Moretti's world, every choice matters, and every heart has a price worth fighting for.